Hello, everybody. Gonna do a solo shot this time. Let me tell you why I'm doing this episode. Recently, if you've caught some of the stuff that's come across on the Source Material Comics feed, Evan Bevins and myself have been discussing Marvel Snap, which is a mobile game that features a lot of Marvel characters. They recently released a card on there that was mainly in conjunction with the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, featuring the High Evolutionary. So I wanted to do a solo shot, kind of focusing on the High Evolutionary, but specifically the Evolutionary War. And what brings me to the first ever what if that I bought off the shelves. What if the Avengers lost the Evolutionary War? So what was the Evolutionary War? So I did some research today, and thanks to Wikipedia and MarvelFandom.com, I've learned some things, and hopefully you will too. So let's talk about the High Evolutionary first. The High Evolutionary, whose real name was Herbert Edgar Wyndham, was an Oxford geneticist who came up with a genetic accelerator. He also created the New Men, a breed of beings who were half animal, half human hybrids. He also created Counter-Earth. MarvelFandom.com says he created Counter-Earth. It was on the exact opposite of Earth's orbit and aimed to create it without the corruption of evil. And Counter-Earth, by the way, that was his big accomplishment, happened to be acquired by the Beyonders. This drove him to the point of being so upset he was going to commit suicide. However, he survives. That kind of brings us to the point of the Evolutionary War. So this happens in 1988 in Marvel Comics, and it goes through the annuals of that time. And from what I read, it's the first of these concepts where the main story would run through the annuals of that year. And this happens, they said, I think, for the next 4 years. The writers across these annuals, Jerry Conway, Steve Englehart, Louise Simonson, Chris Claremont, and Steve Gerber. The plot of this, the High Evolutionary initiates these different efforts that are kind of happening at the same time and plans to accelerate human evolution and eliminate perceived threats to mankind's genetic purity. That is straight from the wiki. All right, I'm going to give you a rundown here of the annuals and what happens in them. So X Factor Annual number 3. High Evolutionary has these different troops or groups of people that he sends out to do specific tasks, one of which is the Purifiers. So these Purifier troops are sent into Subterranea, where Mole Man lives and his Moloids. He sends them down there to kill off the Moloids, but what ends up happening is there is a mutant Moloid down there. This brings in X Factor and Apocalypse. And yeah, get this, at one point, Apocalypse and the High Evolutionary throw down in this battle in space. At the end of the story, the High Evolutionary decides not to continue his efforts in Subterranea because he believes that there is genetic potential there. And Punisher Annual number 1, some Eliminators. So here's another group that the High Evolutionary sends out, the Eliminators. So he sicks them on this drug lord that, lo and behold, the Punisher just happens to be tracking as well. The Eliminators, however, start killing criminals and bystanders alike with no regard for human life. So that clearly gets the attention of Frank Castle. Frank ends up teaming up with the drug lord. They're able to take out the Eliminators. And then Frank summarily takes out the drug lord by busting an aquarium with a pet alligator in it that ends up eating the drug lord. So there you go. That's how the Evolutionary War touched on the Punisher titles. Then we have Silver Surfer Annual number 1. The High Evolutionary has the Eternals. Somehow is able to convince the Eternals to capture Silver Surfer in order to map his DNA. The Silver Surfer is able to escape in an unlikely team up with the Super Skrull. Then in New Mutants Annual number 4, so the High Evolutionary captured Magma, a mutant who has the ability to generate and control lava along with earthquakes in order to further his plan. But the New Mutants are able to rescue her from the Purifier base she was taken to. Now, in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 22, we've got a drug war going on in New York City. And a lot of that is being caused by the High Evolutionary. Specifically, the High Evolutionary keeps sending his Eliminators out to disrupt the drug supply. Now, Spider-Man and Daredevil team up in this one, and they're able to beat High Evolutionary's purifiers, and their plot to sterilize undesirable citizens. And they also have an assist by one Robbie Baldwin. Yes, that's right. First appearance of Speedball in that issue. Then we have Fantastic Four Annual number 21, the High Evolutionary and his Gatherers. Are you catching? There's a bit of a theme here. Gatherers, Purifiers, Eliminators. High Evolutionary has his Gatherers attack Attilan, the home of the Inhumans, in order to gather some Terrigen Mists. The Fantastic Four, Thing, Human Torch, Crystal, and Ms. Marvel join the battle and help Attilan beat back the Gatherers. Now, it's notable because in this issue that Crystal actually leaves the Fantastic Four to rejoin the Inhumans here. Also, something that I didn't know, there was another Watcher that had been going around for a little bit here by the name of Aaron, a Watcher who looked up to Uatu and his somewhat meddling ways. Now, in X-Men Annual number 12, the X-Men and High Evolutionary actually combined forces to beat a massive alien by the name of Terminus in a desolate, destroyed Savage Land. Now, Havoc meets Zaladane, and they enact a plan to restore the Savage Land to what it was. We also learn in this issue that Colossus has a son. Oh boy, dun dun dun. Also, the High Evolutionary's headquarters is now in the Savage Land. Back to the Spider Universe, Web of Spider-Man Annual number 4. The High Evolutionary's Eliminators have arrived in Florida, looking for the nexus of all realities. Guess who else is in Florida? That's right, Peter Parker, who's making his way around doing a talk show tour. Meanwhile, the Kingpin and the Slug are still trying to figure out a solution for their drug supply issue and decide that they have to work together. Now, the Eliminators, their purpose in finding the nexus of realities in the Everglades was to seal the nexus of reality, because apparently the High Evolutionary has determined that the rip in reality allows genetic pollutants to filter in. Steve Gerber wrote this book, and yes, there is an appearance of Man-Thing, who gets exploded at the beginning, but then is back together, no problems at the end of the story. West Coast Avengers Annual number 3. The High Evolutionary needs some vibranium to construct a bomb that will genetically alter all life on Earth. So, he heads to Wakanda. Luckily, the West Coast Avengers become aware of the plan and help the Black Panther stop the High Evolutionary. However, they fail. Bill Foster, better known as Giant Man, was actually a prisoner of the High Evolutionary and ends up getting rescued by Moon Knight, Tigra, and Mockingbird. It is in this issue that the High Evolutionary realizes that he needs to relocate his base, and he does so to the floor of the Pacific Ocean. Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 8. Spider-Man. Boy, he's having his hands full with these drug dealers. Now he has a run-in with the Purifiers, who are chasing after Gwen Stacy. Yes, Gwen Stacy. But of course, we find out that this is the clone that was created by Miles Warren. Now, why would the High Evolutionary be interested in this clone of Gwen Stacy? According to him, she is a genetic freak, and she holds the secrets that the High Evolutionary needs in order to purify the human race. The Purifiers are able to catch up to Gwen Stacy and teleport, but not before Spider-Man is able to tag along. There's a point in this book, bear with me because I'm not familiar with these characters. You all may be, I'm not. And I feel like this, if I had the time, I would go and look into all of what is going on here. But the Young Gods show up and are able to help out Spider-Man as he is on this base now, giving him time to go rescue Gwen Stacy. Who are the Young Gods? I'm not getting into that right now. But the High Evolutionary shows up and tells Peter that, hey, look, we've already done a genetic scan on Gwen before you got to her. She is not a clone, but rather someone that Miles Warren created to look like her, almost down to the genetic level. Now, a bit of continuity, thank you, MarvelFandom.com. We find out that this is actually a lie. That is revealed in Scarlet Spider Unlimited number 1. So, at the time, though, you would have had no idea. You would have thought, okay, well, this is not Gwen's clone, therefore she is just a regular person that was genetically altered to look like her. The High Evolutionary, as you're reading this story, he does not have this evil air about him. his plan is to better the human race. That's his motivation. So clearly, he isn't wanting to hurt anybody. He sends Spider-Man and Gwen back to New York City. And in our final issue, Avengers Annual number 17, Jocasta, who apparently had been reassembled, reaches out to the Avengers mansion. Nobody's there. The Avengers computer assembles some reserve Avengers, the Captain, the Falcon, Hercules, Beast, Grey Hulk, and a female Yellow Jacket, a lady by the name of Rita Damara. They find out about High Evolutionary's plan to detonate a genetic bomb that will cause the human race to instantly progress 1 million years. Now, this is where, obviously, the story picks up from that we're about to get into. The reserve Avengers are then assisted by the Lemurians and Atlanteans when they follow High Evolutionary's mobile base and discover that he intends to detonate this bomb by using the volcano Krakatoa and launching its contents into the atmosphere. Well, luckily, though, the Beast uses the genetic accelerator on Hercules, and Hercules is able to throw down with the High Evolutionary. As the two battle, both of them begin to fade away into the ether. The rest of the Avengers are able to escape, and Jocasta sacrifices herself and self-destructs the base, stopping the threat. So there you go. That is the Evolutionary War, as released in 1988 by Marvel Comics. That's what was. Now let's talk about what is. Some recent events with the High Evolutionary. I'm not going to spend as much time as I did covering what happened in the Evolutionary War because, that's the focus of what we're going to be talking about today. So surprise, he returned. He actually returned about a year later in Mighty Thor Volume 1, number 407 in May of 1989. The last few appearances of the High Evolutionary, notable at least, Annihilation, Conquest in 2007. He was in the pages of Spider-Woman in 2021. He was also in the Fortnite X Marvel, a Fortnite crossover with Marvel Comics, titled Zero War in 2022. Most recently, he has shown up in Warlock Rebirth as of last month in May of 2023. I mentioned how he is the big villain in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie. He was also one of the biggest releases as far as cards go in the mobile card game Marvel Snap. So there you go. That's what is. Now, what if? Give you the release date and the creative team here, and then I will go through and we will experience me reading What If Volume 1, Number 1 together. And it's been a while since I've read it. Probably more than 15 years. I can remember some of the big beats, some of the particular images from the book. But first, What If Number 1, published by Marvel Comics, released March 21st, 1989, a couple months before his reappearance in the actual Marvel timeline. Title of the story is What If the Avengers Had Lost the Evolutionary War? Written by Roy the Boy Thomas, penciled by Ron Wilson, inked by Mike Gustovich, lettered by Michael Heisler, colored by Tom Vincent. All right. So what if the Avengers lost the Evolutionary War? I remember the cover of this comic sitting on the shelf at our People's News. Our People's News was like the bookstore of the area. Actually, it wasn't, I shouldn't say bookstore. I think you could pick up books. However, it was more along the lines of like magazines. You could go in there and just about find any magazine that you wanted. Small store, probably maybe 3 aisles big, and they're short aisles, but they're completely full of newspapers and magazines, small other things that you could buy, as a impulse buy, pop in the pop machine up front. When I was talking the Marvel premiere first appearance of Star-Lord, I edited it out, but I talked about these little horoscopes that you could get that were kind of like in a scroll that you could unwind. So you got your Taurus horoscope for the month and you could look day by day as to what the horoscope was. I remember those being up at the front, right by the counter. But you walk in, you had to go all the way to the back, which wasn't a long trip. I think there were 2 middle aisles. But on the end cap of one in the back sat all the comics. Up top, you had your Marvel, and I think down at on the second shelf, you had your DC, I'm pretty sure. I remember seeing this comic on that shelf and going, 1989, I'm 11 years old, and this cover was striking. Yellow background. And I remember reading a little bit about the Evolutionary War and the big deal that it was. When I say reading about it, it wasn't like I was reading any comic magazines or anything like that. I was seeing it on the shelves at the local People's News or at the Kroger, there were these comics, big, thick annuals. I specifically remember buying the Punisher one, and I don't know if I have any other of these. I don't think I do. I must have only bought the Punisher one off the shelf because I was buying Punisher at the time. I was trying to buy that as consecutively as I can. I remember buying the first Punisher, and so the first annual had released that year in 88. So I remember this being a big deal. But yeah, this cover's striking. You got the High Evolutionary on the front, this yellow background, and this silver and pink figure throwing his hands into the air while all the heroes around him. The High Evolutionary was so huge that none of these heroes could do anything against him, and they were just in his wake, as it were. So had to pick it up because it talked about the Evolutionary War. But this was my first ever What If comic. It was a number one. I don't think that was on my mind at the time. This is 89, so it's not like I'm like, I got to get in on the ground floor or anything like that. I think it was the cover that drew me in. But the fact that it was a number one issue didn't hurt. Now, mind you, this is volume 2, number 1. The first volume ran from 77, and it ran for 47 issues all the way up until its final story, which was What If Loki Had Found the Hammer of Thor? And that was released in 1984. It had been 5 years since the last What If had been on the shelves. And mind you, again, it only went 40-some issues. So it's a 7-year run, nothing to sneeze at. But I had never read any of the What Ifs from Volume 1 before grabbing hold of this one. So I didn't know that this was a Volume 2 going into it. But here we are, it's front page, first page, the big splash page. And there's the Watcher telling you about how he can see into worlds that never were. One where the Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four and they became the Fantastic Five. Or what about the Squadron Supreme? There is even an Earth whose essence, nay, whose very existence, is but one answer to the question, what if the Avengers had lost the Evolutionary War? So the events fold at the end of Evolutionary War a bit differently, where the Avengers have to escape while it looks like Herc made it to the... I guess Hercules made it to... or was hit by the accelerator, but High Evolutionary beat him. Jocasta's never able to initiate the self-destruct sequence, and the Avengers escape in the Quinjet, but it looks like the bomb explodes in the air. The genetic bomb explodes in the air, causing the Quinjet to go down into the sea. Only one man survived, and that was the captain. Luckily, he is rescued by Namor, and the genetic fallout is falling to Earth as Steve Rogers looks on as it scales the world. San Francisco, Tokyo, Moscow. So there's Spider-Man looking down on the citizens of New York as the fallout precipitates upon them. This is pretty cool because at the time, the X-Men, who I think are believed to be dead, and I think that's mentioned in the comic, but Wolverine is watching things unfold, watching this stuff fall from the sky, and he looks at Gateway. Gateway was this Aborigine, I believe, who opened gateways. Anyway, Gateway opens up portals, and Logan's like, we're going home. The West Coast Avenger is sitting on a pier watching everything kind of fall down. Vision's like, it just passes right through me. That's kind of strange, that watching this fallout pass through him. And then the X-Men show up, and they're like, oh, aren't you guys supposed to be dead? Both teams are looking for answers here. And here comes Namor with the captain. Wolverine refers to Namor as 10-1 that cookie cutter head's behind this. Cookie cutter head? I don't know if I've ever insulted anybody by calling them a cookie cutter head. Like, what does that even mean? Like, I look at his face and I'm like, or his head. How do you even say he's got a cookie cutter head? Someone send me a comment and let me know. Oh, the captain lets him in on the fact that it's a genetic bomb that's come down here. And Wolverine's upset because they ran into him before and didn't realize that he was going to be a problem. Oh, things are changing for the X-Men here. So they begin to glow, specifically Wolverine. And Mantis points out that, well, Mantis is pointing. She isn't talking here. I don't know what's going on in her continuity right now or in her timeline, but she cannot talk. But she points out that Wolverine's claws have gotten bigger. Now, remember, the point of the genetic bomb was to evolve humankind genetically a million years into the future. Who knows what it's doing to mutants, but it's made his claws bigger. Almost makes sense. Well, Colossus is glowing. He says that his metal alloy skin is now permanent. Rogue says she's got the powers of each and every X-Man. Psylocke's having problems, though. She can hear everybody's thoughts. Scarlet Witch, she's got better control over her hex powers. And Longshot's has better control over his luck powers. And Namor's like, hey, check it out. I can lift this car a lot easier than I could before. Oh boy. Oh boy. Here we go. Now these are the images that I kind of remember from this book. I remember the particles falling down on everybody, but it's the humans, the effect that it has on the humans. Everybody's head gets massively larger. It's very disturbing, I guess is the best way to put it. Oh, this guy's blaming Wolverine. You mutants, you did this to us. Almost everybody starts losing their hair. Oh, and the Avengers start evolving too. The Captain and Hawkeye's masks rip off because their head is too big. Mantis, even she is getting a large cranium. Wolverine's ready to fight. He knows the humans are going to blame him. But Humankind's like, no, you're right. We shouldn't blame you. We should have revered you and your kind. Oh, that takes them by surprise. Armies in the Middle East are going to strike at each other with their mental bombardment, but then they're like, no, wait, we're the same. Why are we so upset at each other? Southern parts of Africa, white and black, see no reason to fight, no reason not to share. Iron Man is taking off his armor, which, by the way, I assume he was smart enough to take his helmet off before his head got bigger. Spider-Man, though, grows 8 arms. So those who have artificially mutated over the years have different mutations now. 8 arms for Spidey. Poor Mary Jane in the background. I think it's Mary Jane. No hair. Oh boy. Big old noggin. There's a panel here where the Fantastic Four are kind of standing around, and the Thing is in his spiked form, which I remember from some of the Fantastic Four comics, but I didn't know if that was happening in 89 or not. And it sounds like what they're trying to say is that he mutated because of the bomb. So Fantastic Four number 310 and 88, originally on sale September 22nd, 1987, has him on the cover in his spiked form, which I love the spiked form thing. But I guess in this book, what they're saying is that his spiked form was brought about. But the perspective on this, like the Thing looks huge while Invisible Woman, and I believe that's Ms. Marvel there, the female version of the Thing, Sharon Ventura, I think. Anyway, both Sharon Ventura and the Thing are huge, while Human Torch and Invisible Woman look pretty minuscule. Oh, there's the Grey Hulk, who now has Banner's mind. And Daredevil, I found this panel interesting because they talked about how Daredevil was on the cusp between mutant and man. So his head didn't get bigger like everybody else's, but his mutation, I guess we're putting that in quotes, or his powers, are completely amplified. He says, so sensitive now. Sound, smells coming from every side. Can't shut them out. He says he needs to get clear of civilization, so he is heading to get out of New York because it is sensory overload, according to him. So our members of X Factor are now going to some dome. They're kind of torn by the fact that the human race has been genetically modified. Things aren't so bad. Oh, before they enter this building, Dr. Doom shows up. Oh, and he reveals he's mutated like the rest of humanity. He's not there to fight. He's calling the mutants the godlike ones. So he's got this utmost respect for Scott, Jean, Bobby, and Warren here. Oh, and the minds are becoming linked. Human minds are becoming linked. Interesting. So it looks like it's the Fantastic Four that called this meeting of all of the world's heroes. Looks like that's the power pack up there. Big splash page featuring a lot of heroes. Man-Thing, who surprised they convinced him to come out of the swamps. There's Firestar, Doc Ock. That's the leader right there, sitting beside Luke Cage. There's the Blob, I'm pretty sure. Think that's Molecule Man. A lot of people in here. And the captain's the first one to speak. I'll read this. You godlike ones, even more than we, now possess the power to do the greatest good, not merely for the Earth, but for the entire universe. So the captain's kind of laying it out there like, look, I'm going back out here with the rest of my people. You guys are on a whole other level than us. Yeah, you may have a responsibility to actually go out to the universe and do some good. What's crazy is everybody's looking for a leader. Reed Richards is sitting right there. All these heroes. Magneto. Me personally, I'd be choosing Reed. But they all choose Wolverine. They want Wolverine to lead them. This is weird. What's strange about this is like, okay, so the humans are slowly getting a handle on their mental capacity. Like Dr. Doom said, they're becoming linked. The heroes and the mutants, they somewhat keep their personality. However, they have an evolved thinking, like they know that, hey, we're really powerful and they have an evolved sense of togetherness. Oh, this is weird. Everybody yells, "It's time!" Humans and mutants alike yell, "It is time!" And so does the High Evolutionary. So he's bringing his submarine base out of the depths of the ocean. Here comes Dormammu with a bunch of demons. Mephisto, Dormammu, Nightmare. Their eldritch names have ever been a litany of shuddering horror. But today, a mere handful of mortal sorcerers can stay Dormammu's forces. Black magic clashing with white in a violently surreal crescendo. Wow. So there's this massive mystical fight, and both sides disappear. Doctor Strange and Dormammu's forces let loose, and I guess they all die. This panel right here is the one I remember the most, where the Punisher, of all people, his human head grows like everybody else's, and now he's laid down his guns, still wearing the skull on his shirt. Now mankind can pursue its destiny, and magic, like drugs and violence, will play no part in it. Now the building that had all the heroes in it are disappearing. Oh, no, wait a second. The building's disappearing, but the heroes are left there. Oh, that was Madison Square Garden. Sorry, folks. So the heroes met in Madison Square Garden and apparently decided that the building didn't need to be there anymore. So some of the mutants or their collective minds made the building disappear. And the evolved humans are saying they are at the whim of the godlike ones. They are there to serve. And all of our heroes and villains alike, our mutated ones, our godlike ones, rise into the sky. They leave humanity behind. Ooh. Thor and the High Evolutionary are discussing some things on a rooftop, and Thor says, "I and Hercules, whom you slew, were never human or mutant, but of another race entirely." And the High Evolutionary says, "Thor, about Hercules, please believe I acted only in defense of my dream for mankind." And Thor says, "The Nazi Hitler could have said the same." Some rough words right there. Thor's heading back up to Asgard, and they're leaving. Asgard's leaving. Okay. So off go the heroes into space. They pass by the Inhumans, who they decide to join them. Oh, and now they join up with the Unimind. Where are they going, though? That's the question. They're heading over into some part of space that... Oh, it's the Shi'ar. The Shi'ar are not too happy. Allied with the Kree and the Skrull. Yeah, they've got their spaceships out there, and they're ready to take on this mass of godlike ones. To describe to you what's going on here is like all of the heroes and the villains that left Earth, they're just flying like geese into space with Wolverine leading the pack. Everybody's got their arms spread out, and they're just flying off, picking up passerbys, such as the Unimind, and they face off with these ships. There's Wolverine, Colossus, Rhino, She-Hulk, Human Torch. Oh, so what's going on back on Earth? Time has definitely passed as Captain America is dead and gone and buried. We're looking at his tombstone. Over there's Frank Castle, the Punisher's tombstone. But out walks Daredevil, who does not look extremely old. Oh, okay. So he's gotten over his sensory overload and now can communicate telepathically. Meanwhile, High Evolutionary just kind of hanging out, waiting for humanity to continue to evolve, apparently. They aren't done evolving, I guess. Oh, now we're back out in space. Oh boy, they've showed up and they are facing off with Nova, which this is not the helmeted Nova we all know of the Nova Corps. This is the Herald of Galactus Nova. And all of our heroes are they are off to kill Galactus. Nova gets in their way. They kill her. They don't like doing that, but they do. And here comes the Silver Surfer. And they toss Silver Surfer through a portal. He is not coming back for a while. And now they are there to face Galactus. Well, Galactus is ready to throw down, but he doesn't. He gets hit pretty hard. And he realizes he is in trouble. But now he finds that even he cannot absorb all the raw cascading energy which is hurled against him by the attacking mutant mass. Poor Vision. It's been a long time has passed on Earth as humanity is evolving, it looks like. Now humanity doesn't even speak. Daredevil's finally passed away, it looks like. Galactus gets killed. The Vision is now killing himself because there's nobody else around, so he's just fading away. In a heartbeat, the sun jewel upon his forehead drinks in enough energy to cause a small and totally contained solar flare. The rest is silence upon the sun's third world. Oh, geez. Now the mutants, they've done dealt with Galactus. Now they're out facing death. Well, it looks like death is back there, but they're facing off with eternity. What a weird... I mean, it's kind of weird. The mutants, the mutated ones, they, again, they take off. They're just heading out into space. Wolverine is leading the pack. He's they're changed people. They still have this kind of like strange personality. Ben Grimm, holy Hannah, will you look at that? All made out of stars and stuff. Even after Galactus, how are we going to tackle him? Yeah, they got to face off with Death. I mean, you're going to kill Death? Oh, geez, they don't kill Death. They inhabit Death. They emerge with Death, and they're going to use Death to go face off with Eternity. Back on Earth, humankind exists in an unspeaking serenity as if waiting for it knows not what. And then one day, a gargantuan shadow falls across the face of the land. This is a celestial. Yep, the Celestials have returned at last to level their judgment upon the earth and all its works, and they have sentenced it to destruction. Oh man, where are our heroes? Death and Eternity are facing off, or I should say the godlike ones inhabiting Death are facing off with Eternity here. And boom. Now they are part of both. They've merged the two beings. Ooh. The Celestials have sentenced the earth to destruction, and even the godlike ones come back to watch it happen. But humanity in its evolved state is able to disintegrate just with the power of their minds one of the Celestials. Old Coffee Cup Head. Or Arishem. He's gone. And the rest of them are like, oh, we're out. I'll read the little bit here. The evolved humans have long accepted that their place is not among the stars, but here on the world of their ancestors' birth. They are of the earth, aye, and more. Now there is a meshing of all the multitude of minds which have sent the Celestials retreating forever into their own cosmos. The minds become one, and that one becomes the earth itself. In its primitive past, wise men have called the earth a living planet. Such it now is, in a deeper, truer sense that even those men could ever have dreamed. Apart and shielded by its own force of mind, alive and waiting. The High Evolutionary, he's pleased. He is happy that humankind has evolved to where they're at. High Evolutionary wants to join what is now called the Entity, Eternity and Death and the godlike ones in one being. He's calling it the Entity, but the entity's like, no, you go back on Earth, hang out there. And the Entity opens up this massive portal into another universe. But the Entity goes into this other universe and it's just completely blank. And then boom, causes a big bang. Yep. Your scientists speak somewhat flippantly of a so-called Big Bang. Oh boy, this is a whole circle of life kind of deal. So Big Bang happens, Death and Eternity separate again. The once heroes of Earth are no more, their essence having being absorbed forever into one or the other, and forming the catalytic agency which brought the Entity hither. Oh boy, because the Entity left, it's deprived the universe of meaning, and it implodes upon itself till what once seemed infinite space could be bound by a nutshell. So I don't know what's going on with the High Evolutionary here. It says he's stuck on Earth, but he's immobile. Both ultimate victor and ultimate victim is he, of his proud dreams for now vanished mankind. So it looks like the Earth disappears, but then again it says he's on the Earth. I don't know. I'm having a hard time figuring this one out. Is he happy? Unhappy? The very words are meaningless to him. Well, at least he has a nice view. All right, there it is. So, High Evolutionary, he won, but in the end, did he? Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.